Governor Walz is the governor of the state. If you think of it in business terms, he is the CEO of a business. Anytime there is this much fraud gone unchecked and a lack of internal controls within the agencies and programs for this long, any CEO would be held accountable.
I want to get into these calls for his resignation, as well as kind of push back on some of the spin that we're already seeing coming out of the left.
Yeah,
because
I was showing you some stuff last night.
Right. And Logan and I, we talk about even what we talked about on the show, what we're going to talk about the next day, all the time, like all day long. It almost never stops. But that helps us kind of talk about what we're seeing, what we want to discuss, and what we want to kind of take on. But what we see now is a group of members of the Minnesota House and Senate that are calling on the resignation of the governor, Tim Walz. Tom Emmer, who is the House Majority Whip, so very high-ranking member of the House of Representatives. He's from Minnesota, representative from Minnesota, but in the U.S. Congress has called on the resignation. Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, sent a letter calling on the governor of Minnesota to resign, as well as the chairman of the Minnesota GOP has called on the resignation. This was also interesting, and I think it goes to a broader thing that we're talking about here, because remember, we were originally talking about COVID money fraud, and there was that big case, Feeding Our Future, $250 million just from one group. That was when the fraud was only at $1 billion that they were saying was taken in Minnesota. And a lot of that had to do with COVID money. A lot of it had to do with Medicaid fraud in other areas, not necessarily with the child care. But that was one angle of it. Then we see this viral video that goes around. And once again, we should also caution people that when you see this, it is raising questions, but it also, you have to be reserved. Remember, this is one person doing an independent report. And in many of the places that don't want to talk to him, that doesn't necessarily mean that each and every daycare center is a fraudulent operation. So just be careful on that. But it does appear there is a bigger problem in Minnesota. We know that there had been some convictions in this back in 2018. But what we've also seen from the governor of Minnesota is it almost seemed like they got a few convictions and would just say, okay, we're good,
done,
we can move
up.
on, when this is a widespread problem, especially when you think about what we heard and we played yesterday from the U.S. Attorney, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, that said the fraud is not small, it's not isolated, the magnitude cannot be overstated. It is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud. So then he was saying that it was close to $9 billion in fraud. Then you start to hear this story about the daycare centers, which there had already been problems with, but then there's more than that. We also know that, and this is something that hasn't been talked about a lot, but over a week ago, the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, had sent a letter to the governor of Minnesota about another angle of fraud that even since she came to office in 2025, they have uncovered what they call 1,834 ghost students, which are effectively not real people. Okay, there's no identification. A lot of times it's not a real person. Sometimes these people don't even live in the United States. But what they do is they are able to siphon off federal dollars that go to the state for college tuitions, things like that, education monies, and that these 1,834 ghost students have stolen around $12.5 million in taxpayer-funded grants and loans. So then there's a college angle to this. What we are seeing is that this is an industrial operation of fraud within the state of Minnesota, and that the governor trying to say, look, we handled the cases, move on here, isn't helping. But what is trying to help him is the left. Right now, we are seeing across social media, as happens when a big story happens, the marching orders go out and the talking points are laid down. And what we're seeing now is people saying the daycare fraud was from 2018 and 2 people were convicted. And so this is an old story, move along.
Old stories from the conservative press.
They're trying to say it's spin. When you look at what it was, and they're assuming that no one's going to look at that YouTube video and not watch it. And they're like, oh, I've heard there was fraud. It was from a YouTube video. He shows the footage of 2018 that led to this. That is the basis of the starting point of his investigation, saying this is what has happened, but did it end? And that's where the individual, the independent YouTuber journalist, is going around trying to do more investigations and raise the questions. Something that the administration in Minnesota clearly does not want to do, has not done. And I tend to think that the U.S. attorney that is looking into this, that says it is industrial, it is staggering, it is swamping Minnesota and calling into question everything we know about our state. I think that should put to bed any of those spin that this is old news, nothing to see here, move along, that this is a real problem in Minnesota.
Yeah, clip that, as they say. Send that to your friends who are posting things like that, who are just simply sharing a meme that they don't know the background about that. Because look, I even texted Will. I said, this is the spin. What's the response? And then he laid that out essentially exactly like that for me, is saying, here's what they're saying. Here's why we know that's not true. And here's why we know it's spin. We're a nonprofit organization here at the ACLJ, and it's our most important day of the year. Let's put up that QR code. I want to see it so everyone who's watching right now has the opportunity over the next minute to scan it. All the work you hear discussing here, whether that's the cases, Supreme Court filings, our UN advocacy, the interventions we've done for persecuted Christians, obviously our work in Nigeria. You've heard all of this for the last year, or maybe the last 35 years. It's done at no cost to our clients, our legal work, and of course it's no cost to you as the viewer. We are in our final hours of our year-end Freedom Drive. We never want to be behind a paywall. This is your last chance to make a tax-deductible gift that will be tripled. So have your gift tripled by midnight tonight. Let's just do it right now. Why wait till midnight? ACLJ.org. Do it because of your support. We're going to be battling some of the biggest cases and, of course, taking on the mainstream media. Phone lines are open for you, as I said, but this year alone, we have helped countless clients. You've heard their stories. We're going to talk about more when we get back. So scan that QR code, go to ACLJ.org. Make it a big day for us.